Hi everyone, I'm here with the ABCs of Witchcraft, doing the letter B, and today I'm talking about binding. Last week I talked about banishing, which is where you send someone or something away from you. Today we're going to talk about binding. Binding is different than banishment because you're not sending something away. What you're doing when you're binding something or someone is you are stopping them. You're stopping them from harming themselves or another. So it is a fairly serious thing to do. It is not cursing. Cursing is where you intentionally wish harm or a very specific harm on someone. This is about stopping someone from doing something. So this is not something I do a lot of because to me it's like a very serious thing, but I reserve it for things like criminal things and things that are causing harm to others or themselves that is serious. So binding is where you're stopping someone from doing something. There's a couple of ways that you can work with this and do this. The first thing is you freezing. Some people use freezing. They may write the name of somebody that is doing harm to them or loved one and write their name and say, I stop you from doing this. And then they put it into a jar or even a plastic bag or an ice cube tray, put it in the freezer to stop them from what they're doing. Now, it's very important that you are certain that that person is doing it. If you are not certain, I would not suggest that you do it. Now, it is, or write their name on there. Now, it really won't do much if they're not the person that's doing it. It's not going to affect them because if they're not doing it, they're not doing it. But if you're not certain who's doing it, what I would say is you write whoever is doing X and be very specific that you're stopping them. So only use names if you're absolutely certain that that person is doing them. I don't really like that message as much because things can't be in your freezer forever. And at some point, you may have to thaw that out. So that's not my favorite way. It is a way though, and especially if it's something that's temporary. It's good for things like stopping someone from gossiping about you, something that's not like a really long-term, totally serious thing. Now, if somebody is doing something that is serious, what I would suggest is that you make a puppet of the person, and that can be in fabric, it can be in clay. It does not have to be pretty. I am terrible with clay. It just has to look like a human figure. And what you can do is if you have something of that person's, and again, you're certain that it is that person, if you have like this is, where hair clippings, nail clippings, that kind of thing comes into play. Often we don't have those things, and it's a little creepy and weird to get those things. If you have a photo of that person, you can, print it out, cut their face out, put it on the doll. I know, again, that seems creepy and weird, but it's for serious things. So that the doll becomes identified with that person. So it's like the substitute for that person. If you don't have that either, that's okay too. You can just write their name on, if it's a felt doll or a paper doll even, or if it's a plasticine, you can carve the name in so that it identifies to you that is that person. So we're using sympathetic magic in this particular thing. And then you would bind the person. You would literally take a bandage or cloth and wrap it around the doll. Wrap it around it and say, I bind you from doing harm. I bind you from X, whatever it is that they're doing, until it's totally, completely covered. And then say, you can no longer do X. And what you're doing is you're stopping the person from doing that. I have seen this work in serious cases where someone was doing something criminal. They were bound and then they got caught by the police and they ended up going to jail. So I have seen it work, especially in matters that are fairly serious. So you bind them, and then what I would suggest is that you take that doll and you take it out of your house, off of your property, and bury it somewhere at a crossroads, preferably a three-way crossroad, or put it in a dumpster at the end of a crossroad and get it and walk away from it and do not look back at it. Just walk away from it. And that way you're saying, like, it is out and it is done and it is out of my life. This is great for things that are, very, very serious. And again, we have to do this without wishing harm to people. What we're trying to do is stop the person from causing harm to others or to themselves. And so that is their choice, to do that thing or not do that thing. And we're not wishing harm on them, but we're wishing to stop them from doing harm. So that's why we reserve it for serious things, like, criminal type activity. If you're not sure who is doing it, you can write on the doll, whoever is doing X, that they be stopped from doing this. And so that in that way you're covering all your bases, because sometimes we don't have all the facts and we don't know who's doing it. So we have to kind of cover ourselves that way if we really want to make sure that whatever this activity is stopped. So it is a fairly serious thing. If it's something like someone gossiping or spreading lies about you, you can make the doll, and some people will put something in its mouth like thistles or nettle or rue, like a kind of a herb that is associated with stopping or boundaries or something that has to do with protection, into its mouth and sew the mouth shut. And do the same thing, bind it and then take it off their property, especially if somebody's saying particularly harmful things. Again, if you are absolutely certain you know who it is, write the name on there. Otherwise, just say whoever is doing this. And to me, these are fairly serious things, so I reserve them for serious stuff, not for everyday little petty whatever, right? It's for serious things to stop, and it does. I have seen it work on a number of occasions, so it's serious. I would say if you need to do this, then it's something to do during the waning moon. That's when the moon goes from full to new, to make sure, because it's all about, again, it's the energy of moving away. It's the energy of protection. And again, make sure you're doing it with a certain sense of love, even if you don't like that person very much. I know it's hard, I know, but I do believe that what you do comes back to you. So make sure that you're doing it with a sense of like, I'm looking to stop this person because they're harming others, and I want, to spread love, but also I want that person. Part of, being loving is sometimes you have to stop people from stuff. In the long run, they're only going to hurt themselves if they keep doing X activity anyway. Never mind the harm they do to others. So you always want to make sure you're doing things with love. You need to check your ethics. It's a good idea to do a reading of some kind before you do this, to make sure that your ethical ducks are all in a row, so to speak. We're not the gods, so we do not see all things. So I think it's good to do a reading on these things beforehand, but sometimes there are serious situations where you have done all that you can in the physical world, and now you need to take some action on the spiritual plane in order to serve the greater good, so to speak. So it's a serious subject. Let me know what you think. Again, I reserve it for very serious things. It's maybe something I've only done a handful of times in my entire life. And let me know what you think. Do you see binding as like cursing? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Have you ever done it? Has it ever worked? What do you think of this? Let me know. It is kind of a big subject. But yeah, I want to know what you think. This is a discussion. I am not a guru expert type person. This is just what I think, and these are my practices, and this is what I do. And these are my thoughts on it. But I'd love to start a discussion, and tell me what you think. What are your thoughts? Anyway, as always, peace, love, rock and roll. I will see you next time.